It was supposed to be just another episode of Angel Reese's podcast, a chill conversation with NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal, better known as Shaq. Angel, a rising star in women's college basketball, had brought Shaq on to chat about life, sports, and the pressures of the game. Everyone knew Shaq was a jokester, the kind of guy who could go from cracking a joke to dropping deep wisdom in a heartbeat. He was beloved for his towering presence and infectious laugh. But no one, least of all Angel, saw the blindsiding that was about to hit her. But before we proceed further, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. The podcast began as expected, with Shaq leaning into his easy charm, sharing his stories from the NBA, talking about the iconic moments of his career, and tossing in some good-natured jabs about the new generation of players. Angel was laughing along, completely at ease. Shaq had this way of making anyone feel like they were talking to a friend they'd known for years. Angel, confident and self-assured, was ready to roll with any banter Shaq threw her way. After all, she was no stranger to the spotlight. This was Angel Reese, a player known for her fearlessness on the court and her unapologetic style off of it. But even the most fearless competitor can be caught off guard. Somewhere around the halfway mark, things took an unexpected turn. Shaq, in his booming voice and with that classic mischievous grin, brought up Angel's recent viral moments on the court. He complimented her game, her grit, and then, out of nowhere, he started critiquing her moves, her style, and her approach to competition. At first, it seemed harmless, like Shaq was just being his usual playful self. But then, he doubled down. Shaq pointed out a few things Angel could improve in her play style, his tone veering from playful to pointed, like a coach calling out mistakes after a tough loss. The tension was thick, hanging in the air as Angel's smile faltered. Shaq didn't stop. He went on about her work ethic, questioning if she was putting in the time and focus to reach the level he thought she should be aiming for. There was no malice in his words, but they landed heavy. For a player as proud and as fierce as Angel, it was like being called out in front of the whole locker room. She wasn't just being challenged, she was being outright humbled on her own platform by one of the biggest names in the game. Shaq's eyes sparkled with that familiar humor, but there was something else too, an intensity that made it clear he wasn't entirely joking. He wanted her to take his words to heart, to see them as a challenge. Angel's expression shifted from confusion to an unmistakable flash of irritation. She tried to play it off, laughing and tossing back a few witty comebacks, but Shaq kept pushing, not letting her off the hook. It was like watching a pickup game where one player refuses to take it easy, even if the opponent is outmatched. Angel, always the competitor, wasn't about to back down. She started pushing back, questioning Shaq's takes, even throwing some shade on his old-school style, implying that his advice might be a little outdated. But Shaq, unshaken, simply laughed and gave her this look, the kind that said, "You're good, but I've seen great, and I know the difference." This was where things really heated up. Angel's voice, usually confident and upbeat, took on an edge. She reminded Shaq, maybe a little too defensively, that she'd proven herself on the court, that she'd earned her accolades and was doing just fine without needing advice from someone who wasn't even in the same era of basketball. Shaq listened, nodding, but then dropped what could only be described as a verbal slam dunk. In a calm voice, he told her, "Kid, I've seen potential that didn't mean much in the end. Potential's just a word unless you're working harder than everyone else." Angel's jaw clenched, her eyes narrowing. The words hit hard, maybe because she knew there was some truth in them. But the way Shaq delivered it, like an old-school coach who didn't care about sugarcoating, pushed her buttons. Here she was, a college athlete working harder than most people her age, and Shaq, in his towering presence, was acting like she was just another kid with dreams too big for her skill set. The vibe shifted from friendly banter to something more serious. It wasn't just two athletes talking anymore. It was a legend passing down a harsh truth, whether she wanted to hear it or not. Angel took a deep breath, visibly trying to keep her composure. The frustration was written all over her face, and while she tried to match Shaq's intensity, there was no hiding the flash of anger in her eyes. She responded, trying to keep it light but unable to mask her irritation, saying something like, "Shaq, if I took every piece of advice from every legend out there, I'd never know who I am on the court." Shaq just shrugged, giving her a look that said he'd heard it all before. His response was cool, almost dismissive, like he was seeing through every layer of her defenses. And then in true Shaq fashion, he went in for the closer, the final jab that was as humbling as it was unexpected. "You're good, Angel," he said, pausing for effect. "But good isn't enough when you're trying to be the best." His words hung in the air, heavy and unmovable, like the weight of his legendary career bearing down on her. It was the kind of comment that cuts deep, that digs into every insecurity, every self-doubt a young athlete might have. Angel's face said it all. She was angry, yes, but there was something else. Maybe a flicker of realization that Shaq's words weren't just meant to ruffle her feathers. He was challenging her to rise above, to prove him wrong. The rest of the podcast was a mix of tense exchanges and forced laughter, the kind that happens when people are trying to shake off an uncomfortable moment. Angel's tone stayed sharp, her comments edged with a subtle defiance, but Shaq kept his cool, leaning back like he'd done his job. He didn't need to win the argument, he'd already left his mark. For Angel, the conversation had become a battleground, a place where she wasn't just defending her reputation, but her pride. She'd come in thinking it would be a lighthearted chat with one of her idols, a chance to connect with a legend. Instead, it turned into a wake-up call, a reminder that greatness isn't given, it's earned, and no amount of confidence can replace hard work. Shaq wrapped up the podcast with his usual laugh, but there was a weight to the final moments, a lingering tension that left Angel visibly unsettled. She closed out the episode with a smile, but anyone could see the spark of irritation still simmering beneath the surface. For Angel Reese, this wasn't just a podcast episode. It was a challenge, a moment that would either push her to new heights or haunt her, as a reminder of what she still needed to achieve. Shaq, on the other hand, seemed almost satisfied, like he'd done his duty as a mentor, even if it meant bruising an ego or two along the way. He left the conversation the way only a true legend can, unapologetic, blunt, and brutally honest, the way he's always been. For those watching, it was a rare glimpse into the pressure young athletes face, especially when seasoned players, the giants of the game, decide to pass down their wisdom in such an unfiltered way. Shaq's comments weren't just a roast, they were a test, a reminder that respect in the world of sports isn't just given because of viral moments or flashy plays. It's earned through blood, sweat, and the willingness to take criticism, even when it hurts. In that moment, Shaq wasn't just a guest on Angel's podcast. He was a gatekeeper, reminding her, and anyone watching, that the path to greatness is paved with hard truths, and only those who can handle them make it to the top. As the episode ended, fans were left buzzing, some shocked, some thrilled by the exchange. Angel Reese, a name already synonymous with swagger and skill, now had a choice, to brush off Shaq's words as old-school ramblings or to take them as a call to action. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content. We thrive on your feedback, so be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Until next time, keep discovering and stay tuned.